back to Quag Keep. Hey, look at that. Another game where I can read. There's a bunch, believe it or not. This isn't going to be very long. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. Here we go. Know where I'm going to. All right. Chapter 5. The Ring of Forgotten Power. Yeah, nod to Lord of the Rings. Dawn was more than just a strip of cold gray across the sky when they at last rode out of the main gate southward. Milo, knowing that wastes and mountains lay before them, had bought light saddles that were hardly more than pads equipped with loop stirrups and various straps. I can't see. What the hell? He had questioned Ingrid carefully as to the countryside before them, though the elf, for all his woodcraft and ranger scout training, admitted freely that what little he knew of the territory came through rumors and accounts of others. Once they were across the river and into the plains, the Coland, he must depend largely upon his own special senses. They strung out the extra mounts on leads, Waymark volunteering to manage them, while the 4 pack ponies snorted and whinnied in unusual complaint under burdens that had been most carefully derived among them. Having splashed across at the upper ford, they angled due south, mainly because now very easy to see stood the dark stronghold of those wizard Kayak apart from Greyhawk's walls, a place all men with their wits about them knew well to avoid. As long as it was in sight, Devdane told the prayer beads with energy, and even the elf avoided any glance in that direction. Not all their company were at ease, mounted. Gulf did not croak out any complaint, but Ingrid had to work his own magic on the steadiest of the mounts before the lizard man could climb on the back of the sweating, fearful horse. Once in the saddle, he dropped behind, since the other horses were plainly upset by his close presence. Perhaps that was an advantage, for the ponies crowded head of him, keeping close to the human members of the company. Oh my gosh. It's just where I have to look is a pain. Okay. Easy though. I'm going to move the keyboard and put the book right in front of me, because holy crap, this room can be a pain. Okay. Milo wondered a little at the past of the scale-skinned fighter. They had all been caught in or by a game. But why had the role of a scale-skinned fighter been chosen by the one who had become Gulf? If Gulf had not been shackled to them by the common factor of a bracelet, Milo would have questioned that he belonged to their party at all. There's a reason, and we'll find that out later. Now, Fangtooth made no secret of the fact that he both loathed and mistrusted the entirely alien fighter. He rode as far from Gulf as he could, pushing up to the fore, but a short distance behind Ingrid. None of the other oddly assorted adventurers made any attempt to address the lizard man, except when it was absolutely necessary. Gray-brown grass on the plain grew tall enough to brush their shins as they rode. Milo did not like crossing this open land, where there was not even a clump of trees or taller brush to offer shelter. By the 4 teeth of Gar, it could plainly be marked by the walls of the Greyhawk itself, did any with some interest in them stand there now. Without thinking, he said as much aloud. I wonder. Startled out of his apprehensive thoughts, the swordsman turned his head. Yvel was not looking at him. Rather, her gaze slanted back toward the river and the rise of the city beyond. "We ride Gaius bound," she commented, now meeting his eyes. "What would it profit the wizard if we were to picked up before we were even 1 day on our journey? Look there, swordsman." Her fingers were as brown as her face, but the fore one was abnormally long, and that now pointed at the grass a short distance beyond their line of march. Milo was startled, angry at himself at his own inattention. To go into this land without one's senses always alert was worse than folly, and to have betrayed his carelessness shamed him. For what he saw proved that Yvel might well be right in her opinion that they were not naked to the sight of an enemy. The grass, which was so tough that it stung if one pulled at it, quivered along a narrow line that exactly matched their own line of march. He did not note that the quiver marked the slight distortion, only visible to them in the fashion, marking them from aught but a counterspell strong enough to break it. "It cannot last too long, of course," the battle maid continued. "I know not how strong a power worker this Hista may be, but if he can hold our cover so until we gain the tributary of the Void, the land beyond is less of an open plain." "You have ridden this way before?" Milo asked. If the girl knew these southwest lands, why had she not said so? Here they depended upon Ingrid as guide when the elf had admitted he used instinct alone. She did not answer him directly, only asked a question of her own. "You have heard of the raving of Keo, the Less?" For a moment he sought a way into his memory which had so many strange things hidden in it. Then he drew a deep breath. The answer to the name she spoke, it was something out of the darkness that had ever lurked menacingly at the heels of those who swore by law. It was treachery, so black that it blotted the dark pages of Chaos's own accountings. Death so hideous a man might retch out his guts if he thought too long upon it. "But that lies years behind us." Her voice was as even and controlled as Ingrid's had ever was. "And why should such as I think upon that horror? I am one born to the sword way. You know the practice of the northern bands, though those who ride under the unicorn have a choice after their 30th year. They may then wish a union to become a mother, if the high-horned lady favors an enlargement of her followers. Then the child, being always a girl, is trained from birth in the ways of the one clan of her heritage. My mother, having put aside the unicorn and followed her will of union, became swordsmistress and teacher. But our clan fell into hard days, and there were 3 harvests that were too thin to support any but the old and the very young. Therefore, those who were still hardy of arm, who could ride and fight, and my mother was a Valkyrie," Yvel's head lifted proudly, "took counsel together. They were, by custom, unable to join the companies again, but they had such skills as were valuable to the open market, wherein sword and spear may be lawfully sold. My clan, there were 25 who swore leadership to my mother, and it came then to Greyhawk to bargain, settling for the pay in advance so that they might send back to the clan hold enough to keep the life in the bodies of those they cherished. Then, under my mother's command, they took service with Record of Lodoss. Milo's memory flinched away from what the name summoned. "Those who were lucky died," Yvel continued dispassionately. "My mother was not lucky. When they were through with her, but no matter. I have settled 2 debts to that, and the settlement hangs at the moon shrine of the clan. I took blood oath when I took the sword of the full clan sister. That is why I do not ride with any band, but am a seeker. And why you came to Greyhawk, he said slowly. But are you not Yvel, remember? We are entrapped in others. She shook her head slowly. I am Yvel, who I might have been in the other time and place which the wizard summoned for us to look upon, does not matter. Do you not feel this also, swordsman? I am Yvel, and all that Yvel is and was is now in command, unless this Hista plays some tricks with us again. That is how it will remain. He has laid a geas upon us, and that I cannot break. But when this venture lies behind us, if it ever will, then my blood oath will bind me once more. 2 offerings I have made to the Horned Lady. There are 2 more to follow if I live. He was chilled. That about her which had attracted his notice had been but a veil hiding an iced inner part at which no man could ever warm himself. His wonder at their first entrapment grew. Was it some quirk of their own original characters that had determined the roles they now assumed? Desperately, he tried now to remember the game. Only it was so blank in his mind that he wondered for a moment of chill if all his story had been illusion and lies. But the band on his wrist remained. The encirclement of jewel-pointed dice was proof and part of this wizard's story. They spoke no more. In fact, there was very little sound from the whole party, merely the thud of hooves and now and then a sneeze or cough as some of the chaff from the crushed dead grass arose to tickle at nose or throat. The sky was filled with a sullen haze to veil the sun. When they were well out in the plains, Milo called to a halt. They fed their animals from hands full of grain, but did not let them graze, watering each from liquid poured into their helmets. Before they ate the tough bread, which a man must chew a mouthful a long time before he swallowed, Gulf brought out of a pouch of his own some small hard-dried fish, and ground them into swallowable powder with his formidable array of fangs. Milo noted that those lines in the grass had halted with them, even joined before and behind the massings of their company, as if to enclose them in a wall. He pointed them out. Both the elf and Devdine nodded. Illusion, Ingray said indifferently. But the cleric had another term, magic, which means we cannot tell how long it will provide us with cover, he repeated Yvel's warning. The river has some cover. The girl brushed crumbs of bread carefully into one palm, cupping them there preparatory to finishing off her meal. There are rocks there. Ingrid turned his head sharply, his slanted eyes searching her face, as if he demanded access to her thoughts. Yvel licked up the crumbs, got to her feet. Her expression was as stolid and remote as Ingrid's own. No, comrade elf, she said, answering the question he had not asked. This road has not been mine before, but I have good reason to know it. My kin died in the reaving of the Keoth, the less. Ingrid's narrow, long-fingered hand moved in a swift gesture. The heads of the other 3 men turned quickly in their direction. It was Nail who spoke. That was a vile business. Devdine muttered over his beads, and Weirmark nodded emphatic agreement to the berserker's comment. If Gulf knew of what they spoke, he gave no sign. His reptilian eyes were nearly closed. However, a moment later, his croaking voice jerked them all out of a terrible memory. The spell fades. He waved a clawed finger at those lines. Ingrid agreed. There is always a time and distance limit on such. We had better ride on. I do not like this open land, nor would he, for those of his race preferred woods and heights. Gulf was right. The line in the grass was different. Now it flickered in and out, being sometimes clearly visible, sometimes so faint. Milo thought it vanished altogether. They mounted in some speed and headed on. The drabness of the sky overhead, the faded grass underfoot, mingled into a single hue. None spoke, though they stepped up their pace, since to reach water by nightfall was important. There were flattened water skins on one of the pack ponies. They had thought it better not to fill them in Greyhawk. Such action would have informed any watcher that they had headed into the plains. They depended upon the fact that Keeland did have 3 tributaries of size feeding the main stream, which finally angled north to become a mighty river. As I went now, Milo kept an eye on the line of distortion. When at last it winks out, he felt far more naked and uneasy than he had in the streets of Greyhawk itself. Ingrid reined in. There is water not far ahead. They can smell it, even as I indicated the horses and ponies that were pushing forward eagerly. But water in such a barren land is a lodestone for all life. Advance slowly while I scout ahead. And with that, I will see you all in the near future to conclude this chapter. And thank you for listening.